Okay, so this is a continuation to the previous video, which is about fertilization, reproductive system. What has been tackled already is the female reproductive system. Here in this video, we'll be tackling the male reproductive system later. But for now, let's start with this page first. Um, so previously, this has been tackled already, but it's also written in this page. So this is the egg cell itself, the ovum. So the parts are as follows. We have the nucleus, we have the cortical granules, the cytoplasm, the corona radiata, or in other words, the follicular cells. This is where sperm cells burrow through. And this is the zona pellucida, or in other words, a jelly coat. It contains receptors where sperm cells could bind on. Whichever sperm cell pierces through first is the one that fertilizes the egg cell. And the rest, after that happens, the zona pellucida would harden. It goes along with this phenomenon. It triggers acrosomal reaction. Acrosome releases digestive enzymes. So it hardens so that the rest of the sperm cells that did not match with the egg cell would die. So only one, literally, among millions would survive. And yes, the ZP or zona pellucida is the outer layer of the egg. Although this one is at the more outermost part, that's not considered a layer of the egg. Okay, the ovum or egg, the female gamete, in other words, is haploid, so single N. When we say diploid, it's 2N, which the ovum is not. The cortical granules, this is where you modify extracellular environment. You block additional sperm after fertilization. So this is part of the story as to after one sperm cell fertilizes the egg cell. So it blocks the remaining sperm. The remaining sperms that are trying to pierce through the zona pellucida. They won't be able to. So that's about it. How about the male gamete? In other words, the sperm or spermatozoa. So I'm looking for the head. I think it's this part. Yeah, it's this part. So the acrosome is located here. It has enzymes. We have the nucleus. It contains the chromosomes, the genetic material of the male. We have the midpiece, the one in the middle, in between the head and the tail. That is the flagellum. The midpiece, this is where the mitochondria is located. This is for ATP as well as motility. The centriole, also inside the head. We have the flagellum. This is responsible also for motility. It helps propel the sperm cell while it travels within the reproductive system of the female. And we have the plasma membrane somewhere here. So we have, I believe there are 23 chromosomes, 22 of which are autosomes, and one of which is the sex chromosome. I think that's the case regardless of sex, whether you're male or female. I might be wrong, but I think that's how it is. Okay, let's go here. Egg cell. So this is in chronological order, coming from the most basic version until it becomes ready to be conceived. So we always start with egg cell. This is haploid, as mentioned earlier. Then it becomes a zygote. In the previous video, we talked about gestation. So yes, we cannot call the baby egg cell or zygote throughout the entire process. In certain trimesters, we call it depending on how old it is. So after egg cell becomes a zygote, that diploid. We have the blastula, gastrula, the embryo, which is diploid, and then after embryo, it becomes a fetus. I believe this is by the second trimester, I believe. And after fetus, it becomes a neonate. Okay, this one's not finished. Just disregard that one. Okay. What is this? So I think these are 3 phases: fetal phase, prior to ovulation phase, and after fertilization. Oogonium 2, primary oocyte. Okay, the oogonium is formed in bulk by mitosis from primordial germ cells. Oogonium is the female germ cell. I think that's what's the implication here. And then meiosis 1 begins. It becomes a primary oocyte. This is produced in the primary follicle. And then from primary oocyte to secondary oocyte, meiosis 1 is finished. Somewhere here. I think that detail is very critical as to when meiosis 1 is finished. It's here. And the secondary oocyte is released by the ruptured follicle. This follicle that's being referred to, it might be the one that's being shed. And that's what's being released, the layers of endometrium and the ruptured follicle. The secondary oocyte is what leaves the ovary into the fallopian tubes. Eventually, this would become an egg cell, and that's what's being fertilized by the sperm once it reaches the fallopian tubes. I'm not sure about the relevance of these two, the first and second polar body. I can't recall, unfortunately. Let's move on. So after meiosis 2 happens, if fertilization occurs, the secondary oocyte becomes an egg. There you go. This is what I was referring to in the previous video. So only if fertilization occurs, this one becomes an egg. If it does not become an egg, then it should imply that no fertilization has occurred, and usually that's the case. Unless you get pregnant, the secondary oocyte will not become an egg. And that's what you shed whenever you undergo menstruation. That's what you release. Okay. Stages of egg development or production. I think this is the one. Yeah. This is oogenesis. Should have written this here, but I guess it was written here instead. If there is no fertilization, like I said, the secondary oocyte will continue to pass throughout the body. And eventually the polar bodies, I think what's being referred to is these two, they would disintegrate eventually. Okay, so let's go talk about the spermatogenesis. This one is for the male counterpart. In other words, sperm production. So, before we start though on this, you have to know that diploid is to mitosis. Always recall the analogy: diploid to mitosis, haploid to meiosis. Diploid 46, haploid is 23, 23. You basically turn 46 into 2 parts. That's 23, 23. Sperm is haploid, so single N. Spermatogonium is also, it's not haploid, it's diploid. This is the male germ cell. So males are born with a finite number. That means it's limited. It's associated with mitosis, and it divides infinitely after puberty. The primary spermatocyte, by the way, these are seen here. So we just want to know the definitions of each one before we start talking about the process itself. The primary spermatocyte is diploid still because they were produced by mitosis. So meiosis 1, secondary spermatocyte, this is haploid, and then meiosis 2. Then this becomes spermatids. This is haploid, maturation and development stage 4. I'm not sure why I wrote it in Mandarin. Okay, so we have 2, 4, 4. Spermatozoa or sperm, that's haploid. Okay. mitotic divisions here, meiosis 1 here, meiosis 2. So you can see the first three parts are diploid. They become haploid once they become secondary spermatocyte. As you can see, we have haploid, haploid. They turn into two parts. And early spermatids, once they reach this part, they become four of them. Differentiation, Sertoli cells give nutrients. That's also one important detail that may be useful for you to know. If you're trying to find which kind of cell gives nutrients to the sperm or spermatid, Sertoli cells is the answer. Basal compartment, lumen of seminiferous tubule. This is a part of the male reproductive system, which would be mentioned here. So let's look for the seminiferous tubule in particular. It's here. So this is well, it's covered by the scrotum. Let's go back. So wait, you have to know that this part is the one responsible for the creation of sperm. So it makes sense that sperm is the topic here. Okay, where do we start? Yeah, so after talking about seminiferous tubules, let's go with yeah, like I said earlier, the scrotum. It's the one responsible for the protection of the testicles or the testes. This one. From room temperature. So, from what I remember, if the temperature is really high, well, regardless if it's too hot or too cold, it's not ideal for the seminiferous tubules to create sperm. I think that's the case. The testes. This is the one responsible for the creation of sperm. Also, and it produces testosterone with the help of Leydig cells, and it's a gland. Together with the female counterparts, I think that is the ovaries. So if female is to ovaries, male is to testes. Both of them are glands. So the reti testis moves sperm from the testes to the epididymis. What is the role of the epididymis? This is a long coiled duct outside the testes, and it stores the sperms until they're ready for, until they are qualified for maturation, and they move mature sperms to the vas deferens. The vas deferens is the one responsible for transporting the mature sperm from the testes. So it is between, or in other words, it connects the epididymis and the urethra. So urethra is a more familiar organ. It is the same passage for urine. So yeah, the seminal vesicle produces majority of the ingredients of semen. For example, sugar for motility. Also, another function is it stores semen. And the prostate produces fluid that nourishes and transports sperm. So its role is not so far from that of the seminal vesicle. Okay. How about the bulbourethral gland? So it's somewhere here. So it produces pre-semen, pre-ejaculate. This is intended to neutralize the acidity in the urethra. So aside from the vagina being acidic, it's also the urethra. I'm just not sure if this this applies for also the female counterpart, because this one, for sure, it applies to the male. So, yeah. To neutralize acidity in urethra for lubrication prior to ejaculation. And yes, this is located below the prostate. If the prostate is this, the bulbourethral gland, in other words, the Cowper's gland, is located here. The bladder is over here, urethra over here, that long line. And then ejaculatory ducts. It's also here, close to the prostate. It transports sperm and fluids from the apula and seminal vesicles to the prostatic urethra. I'm not even going to bother explaining that. I don't recall anymore. Okay, so this is the sex organ, the penis. It is also intended for urination. Both semen and urine pass through the same, let's say it's a train. It's the urethra. And yes, also at this part is the urethra. This is where urine or semen exits. Okay. So, in the previous video, we have discussed, well, I did not really discuss much, but I did mention 3 important hormones. First is estrogen, next is progesterone, and the other is testosterone. Testosterone, it has a definition here. I wasn't able to discuss it there, but here we have it already. So, testosterone is mainly secreted by the male gonad. It helps regulate libido, red blood cell production, bone mass, sperm production, fat distribution, as well as muscle mass and strength. So, one way to remember that testosterone is associated with muscle mass and strength regulation is that, let's say, if someone is not able to, okay, never mind. That example isn't, it's not universal. That's the thing. Let's move to the testes. So testes goes through the seminiferous tubules, then the rete testes, then the efferent ductules, then the epididymis. Again, the seminiferous tubules produces, maintains, and stores sperm. It contains Sertoli cells, in other words, epithelial cells, in the lining of the tubules, and it undergoes differentiation process in order to convert to sperm. And yes, it supports sperm development. Also, the seminiferous tubules is the site of meiosis, then spermatogenesis. The Leydig cells, so we have 2, Sertoli and Leydig. The Leydig cells, in other words, the interstitial cells, are located outside of the Sertolis. The efferent ductules is where the sperm exits the testes, and the epididymis is a long coiled duct outside the testes. The sperm matures here. So that's been said twice already. Basal luminal compartment, area from tight junction towards smooth muscle. For luminal, that is towards lumen. Okay, let's go back to 3 important glands that were mentioned earlier. The accessory glands, we have the prostate gland, seminal vesicles, and the Cowper's gland. So, let's start first with Cowper's gland. So, again, in other words, this is called the bulbourethral. So, it secretes viscous fluid with mucus. So, this is for lubrication prior to ejaculation. It secretes pre-ejaculate also. And the seminal vesicles is the one responsible for the secretion of alkaline fluid. Why is it alkaline? So that basically means it's not acidic, it's alkaline. This contains fructose for energy, enzymes, the purpose wasn't mentioned here, prostaglandins for motility and viability. Viability is an important factor because this is sperm after all. It has to successfully fertilize the egg cell. Motility again is for the movement. And yes, since it is alkaline, it is intended to neutralize the acid in the female reproductive tract, more specifically in the vagina. So that's where, in a way, since the unacidic environment is not okay for sperm cells, this is their weapon in order to, or let's say it's their armor, so that they wouldn't die very easily in that region, since they have a long way to go. The prostate gland secretes citrate and enzymes. Citrate is for energy and motility. Enzymes is intended to break down semen clot. Okay, this is finished. Okay, I'll be ending this video. This will be for the next one. Next one would be about chromosomal aberrations. I think there are 5 of them. But yeah, thanks for watching.